The British government is currently investigating the Maxwell companies for precisely the same asset-shifting card tricks the President employs each year in his budget message. Is the U.S. going to go overboard too?
I wish I'd said that, but then I will. But to another audience.
There are those who believe the goal of the present administration is to transform the republic into an oligarchy. Do you think this is so? If so, will it succeed?
I don't think this government has any real plans about anything except, day-to-day survival. The country has always been an oligarchy, and probably always will be. That is the nature of politics. When they were cooking up the Constitution at Philadelphia, Madison addressed himself to that because somebody brought up, well, what happens, when there are 100 million people in the country, which means you would have several hundred people in the House of Representatives. It's too big, it's too unwieldy. How would you get any work done? And Madison said, it is an eternal law. It is an iron law of oligarchy, that in every society only a few maneuver it and manipulate it. So you can count on that for good or ill.
Do you share the suspicion that investigations into the October surprise and other matters will of necessity lead nowhere because of careful handling so as not to lead to impeachments?
I don't think we'll ever see an impeachment again, since it is now, I think, somewhere written into the Constitution that no one is accountable for anything. So that's all out. I thought Reagan probably should have been for a number of reasons, but I think they probably got the October surprise pretty well handled, and I don't think anybody will be nailed. But if they do, what are you going to do? There is no law, really. Everybody seems to be outside of it. Or the new thing now, my friend Barrett Prettyman will instruct me later in it, but the plea bargain. If you committed a crime with 4 others, they torture one of the 4, and then he submits, he speaks against you, and you go to prison, he stays out. That seems to be the new way of doing it. So I rather suspect that for the October surprise, somebody will be sacrificed. Personally, I believe in it. I do believe that in order to get elected, that gang would do anything, but so would the other side.
Since you have come out for legalizing drugs, what do you suggest we do to break through and accomplish this?
Well, legalize means just what I say, legalize. Drugs sold at cost. I think heroin would be about 5 cents. You certainly would money on instruction, just as we don't try not to sell bottles of vodka to 9-year-olds. You wouldn't sell heroin to them. The important thing is to remove the profit motive. Once there's no profit in flogging drugs with the young or with anybody, then crime is out of it. That eliminates not only mafia, big crime, but it also eliminates the guy who knocks the old lady on the head in order to get money for a fix. Just legalize it. I've never seen a country like, Europe just shakes its head with wonder at us. Now, we have laws against everything. I mean, we go into private behavior in a way that is undreamed of in the rest of the first world. They have some laws against drugs. By and large, it's the Drug Enforcement Agency, my favorite name. What does it mean, as usual? Drug enforcement, they enforce you to take drugs is what it means, so that they can then play cops and robbers and get big appropriations. They're going around Europe now making people change their laws and do this and do that to conform to our idiocies. Drugs have been around forever. Some people will always get hooked. Some people will die of it, and, well, that's their choice. Same with alcohol, same with cigarettes. What on earth is this fuss about? Where's the money to fight this war on drugs? And I love the bellicose language, wars and czars. It's nuts.
Do you honestly believe that Larry Tisch, Kay Graham, or John Curley, or their boards of directors, have any influence whatsoever on what stories appear in the news or how they are presented?
It doesn't work like that. Yes, of course they do have enormous influence if they want to use it. What happens is when you have a ruling establishment, You have your job as managing editor because you will think the same way the publisher does, who in turn will think the same way the advertisers or whoever is the ownership that's involved. You're in place, and you know what to do. You don't have to be told what to do. So the head of the New York Times, President of the United States, head of CBS, will all have pretty much the same response to anything that comes up. That's why we have the prep schools, to one of which I went. These are training places, Exeter and Andover, that was for the boys of good family without money who would have to hustle, like George Bush and me. The ones who had money would go to Groton and St. Mark's, and they would be given hobbies so that they wouldn't grow up to be wastrels. But those schools condition you to think in a certain fashion. So my friend Kay does not have to ring up anybody unless it's a big policy decision of some kind, like which nullity to support for president. They're there because they think alike, and that is what a ruling class is.
Is there anyone now running for president you could support, or at least in your mind, is there someone who would do the least harm?
Oh, how can you tell? I mean, there's no way of getting to know them. And since one of the proposals I've been making for 30 years, you can see how well I've done with it, was to make it impossible to give money to candidates, by and large, only some amounts, and then to provide them with free time on television and on radio and in the press. This would mean, let's say in a presidential campaign, that you couldn't buy those 30-second spots. That would be out. What you would have then is the candidates would be grilled by journalists, by their mother-in-law, whoever. You really get to see them as they are, instead of as these sort of, well, cosmetic ads is really, in a sense, what they are. You would then know, at least, you'd have an idea, can the guy think, what's he thinking about, what's in his head. Now I don't know any of them, you don't know any of them, we will never know any of them, unless you're a personal friend.
For many years you have lived in Italy, a country of political cynics. Is that why you feel at home there?
There's a lot to be said for Italian cynicism, but actually I don't live in, I live in Los Angeles too, so you could argue I don't live at all in the United States, but I have a lovely quote here which I didn't use. It's from Giolitti, who was quite a good cynical statesman. And he said, "There is a fatal law that makes every reactionary government seek a diversion abroad." That's Italian cynicism.
Before asking the last question, I'd like to thank you so much for being here. We have a certificate of appreciation and the National Press Club mug.
Well, I got a medallion last time.
The questioner wants to know, when are you taking over your own network talk show?
Well, I'm rather kept off the networks for about 20 years because I don't know why, I don't seem politically correct. I thought everything I say is so reasonable, but they don't seem to want to hear it. But I'm having lunch with Peter Jennings tomorrow, and he said ABC wants to ask you a question, so you might be seeing me soon. Oh, we had the hustle. Yeah, there's another classmate. Yeah.
You've been watching a luncheon address by author Gore Vidal at the National Press Club. For more information on this event, please write to the National Press Club Library at the National Press Building in Washington, D.C. The zip code is 20045. If you would like a transcript of this event, you can write to C-SPAN Transcripts, care of Typewriter Incorporated, Post Office Box 885 in Lincolnshire, Illinois. The zip code is 60069.
C-SPAN 2 proudly marks its 5th year telecasting live coverage of the U.S. Senate. C-SPAN 2 is part of the C-SPAN networks, privately funded to serve the public by America's cable television companies.
Coming up next, it's a recorded call-in program with Congressman Bill Richardson of New Mexico. He came to our studios this morning to discuss his new 10-point plan for stimulating the national economy. Mr. Richardson is a Democrat serving in his 5th term, representing New Mexico's 3rd district, which includes the cities of Santa Fe and Gallup. He serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committee and the Select Committee on Aging. Congressman Richardson is a graduate of Tufts University and the Fletcher School of International Relations.
Congressman Bill Richardson, a Democrat of New Mexico and Majority Whip at Large of the House of Representatives. About a month ago, you proposed your own plan to reinvigorate the economy. Before we get into the details of it, what led you to that point and how have people reacted to it?
Bruce, I think the most important issue, probably secondary to health care, that my constituents and the Congress is considering is an economic plan to stimulate the economy, an economic stimulus plan. And I proposed it November 15th as part of the package that the Ways and Means Committee and Finance Committee are going to be considering as a congressional alternative to a White House plan. I felt that the economic plan should be long range and short range, and I felt very strongly